All right, I'm going to talk about the future of voice marketing. What I want to do is go over the history of communication very briefly. In the very beginning, we started off communicating by voice. That's all we had. It was literally grunts. And doing the research for this talk, I found out that scientists believe that we started speaking to one another about 100,000 years ago. So for 100,000 years, we talked, and that's the only way that we communicated to one another. That advanced through the ages. Now, even though we had the written word, primarily we communicated with the spoken word. Now, all of that changed when we started to produce more and more writing. And as you can see, about 450 years ago, the printing press was created, and we created libraries of books. Now, all of a sudden, instead of talking one-on-one or one-to-many physically, the people that were near you, you can get your word out beyond that. All right, so the printing press did change communications, and that turned into the primary way of getting your information out widely. Fast forward to about 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, when the personal PC came out. And all of a sudden, instead of writing and reading and communicating orally, we were doing this. We started sending messages to one another, and we were using our fingers. Right? So a different way of communicating with people. More recently, this is how we communicate. Right? So everyone's looking at their phones. They're using their thumbs. So before we used to speak, then we wrote, then we typed. Now we use our thumbs. All right, what I want you to think about also is when you use your thumbs, how fast are you actually typing? Now, how fast do you think you're typing on a keyboard? Roughly. 35, 40 words per minute at the most. What about your thumbs? It's about 15 or 20. So it's a much, much slower way of communicating than doing this. And when I'm talking, I'm communicating at about 150 words per minute. So we're now doing this primarily, and it's rudimentary compared to the other ways that we've communicated, but it's the norm now. This is a timeline that shows how modern technology has influenced communications. So starting in about 1995 is when Internet Explorer came out. I think Amazon actually launched before this. It was in 94. So things really started to take off with the online world in 95. 2007, Apple introduces the iPhone, which is the first true smartphone. And that's when people started communicating with their thumbs. That's about a 12-year gap, right? It's been about 12 years since the iPhone was introduced. So at 2019, a lot of people are wondering, what's next? We're going in 10, 12-year cycles. What's coming after the smartphone? Is the smartphone going to look like a pager in a couple of years, right? If you think back to pagers 20 years ago, they were all the rage, and now they're antiquated. You would never use one today, right? Because you have text messaging. All right, so I already asked this question. I know I do this a lot. I speak into my phone and not for communications with someone else on the other end as far as a voice conversation, but it's all speech to text. This is the way that I get data into my phone now for the most part. Timeline of voice assistants. Siri was the first. Apple came out with Siri in 2011. And I don't know about you. Who here uses Apple? I don't, but wow, okay, half, more than half. How do you feel Siri's kind of kept up with the times? Anyone? It's surprising. It's behind, yeah. So they had the first mover advantage, and seemed like it kind of slipped out of their fingers. So Apple, Google, Microsoft, they've all got different products. Microsoft Cortana, I don't know if you heard about this, but you can now use Alexa. You can talk to Alexa. You can talk to your Microsoft Cortana voice assistant using Alexa. So basically, Alexa's baked in. Microsoft has seeded this market to Amazon, which is amazing, right? I mean, I remember when Microsoft was the dominant player, no doubt about it. And now they are seeding parts, a future market, a huge future market to Amazon. I went to this conference. It was all about voice. It was called AlexaConf in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I was really surprised at the enthusiasts in the voice industry that were there. The people that were attending, there was about 500 people, and it's doubled in size for the last 3 years. So it's getting bigger and bigger. Now Amazon's actually sponsoring it. But the people that were there that are really into voice, like way more than I am, they're talking about things like mobile apps as legacy. Right? They're so convinced that voice is the next big thing that the web, mobile, their legacy. If you haven't done that already, you're just in the dark ages, right? Voice, they believe, is absolutely the next big thing. And the reason they think this is probably has something to do with this chart. So this chart shows the adoption rate of different technologies over the ages. So let's look at computers. So computers here, 20 years after they were introduced, computers had a, what is this? Percent adoption by the US population of about 30%. So after 20 years of being in the marketplace, they only got about, well, I guess 30% or so of the population used computers. Let's look at some of these more established ones. Radio, right? Radio from back in the 1950s and before. It took them, about 10 years to get to roughly 40-50% adoption, and then it kind of just tapered off from there. Internet, right? We all know that the internet was this big thing, happened in the mid-90s, huge rush and a land grab to get on the internet. You can see it plateaued, right? But let's go all the way to the left. Smartphones. We love our smartphones, right? So smartphones had a very fast adoption rate, but look at smart speakers. Now, this is happening right now, right? They're at a 50% penetration in less than 5 years, faster than smartphones, and we love our smartphones. Or we can't, if you leave your smartphone at home on your way to work, what do? You turn around, right? You go get it. If you leave it at your desk and you go into the bathroom, you turn around, you go get it, right? That thing is always on you. I mean, does anyone not have their phone within arm's distance right now? Yeah, mine's right there, right? So we love our smartphones, but we actually love our smart speakers even more. All right, so what do we do with these smart speakers and voice assistants in general? This chart shows you what we're really doing right now. Right? Now keep in mind, we're only a couple of years into voice technology. So we're using it for basic stuff. Right? We play music on there. I know with my Echo at home, half the time it's just play whatever, just play something. Right? I just want to listen to music. Weather's a big thing. What's the temperature going to be tomorrow? When I was packing to come here, what's the temperature going to be on Thursday and Friday in Orlando? Right? And it told me a couple days ago. Now, where are people using their voice assistants? Now, remember, voice assistants go beyond the physical device that stays in a room. It's mobile, right? Voice assistant. This is a Google Watch. The reason I bought this watch, it was Black Friday, I got it for $90, is because it has Google Assistant baked in. I can talk to the internet on my watch, right? But where are people using these assistants? Surprisingly, it's in the car. So the car is the big frontier. The folks that put on the Alexa Conf, they're putting on another conference in a couple of weeks called Voice in the Car. So there's this battle right now for how to get voice assistants into the car. Are you going to have Alexa baked into your cars as they roll off the assembly line? Or is it going to be Google? Or is it going to be something else? All right. Again, show of hands. Who uses an Echo? Okay. Who here listens to flash briefings? All right. Who has an Echo and doesn't know what a flash briefing is? Okay. So check out flash briefings. If you have an Echo, then you probably have the Alexa app. You need to install it in order to set up your Echo. It's a little bit difficult to get to. I can show you after this talk. But there's a setting called flash briefings. Media companies can publish flash briefings. They can only be 10 minutes max. They're usually like 3, 4, 5 minutes long. It delivers news and other information that you're interested in. There's several thousand of them, and they cover all sorts of different things. They started off just as a news delivery platform. But when I wake up in the morning, I make coffee, I make my eggs, and I tell Alexa to play my flash briefings. I've got about a dozen that I listen to, and she just starts at the top and goes right down the line, and she plays 3 or 4 minutes here, 4 to 5 minutes there, however long each individual episode is. So this is the adoption rate of flash briefings. Starting right about here is when I started to collect the data myself, because I found out that in the Alexa app, when you go search for flash briefings, it'll give you a number. I just updated it this morning. It's at a little over 8,500. There's 8,500 flash briefings. Now, I think I mentioned before, there are 100 million Alexa devices in the wild right now. It's estimated that 30% of Alexa or Echo users listen to flash briefings. So 100 million times 30%, that means that there's 30 million people that listen to flash briefings, and there's 8,500 of these. There's not a lot of supply for the demand, and the demand is increasing rapidly. So if you're like thinking media, what can you do to get out in front of people and get your voice out there? Think about a flash briefing. It's brand new territory. Most people here don't even know what it is, right? But there's 30 million people that are listening to it. There's something happening here. All right, let's compare flash briefings. When I got this slide, it was 8,000. It's actually 8,500 now. To other things that you can do or listen to with these smart devices. So skills is a programming skill. And this is a more sophisticated programming thing than a flash briefing. A flash briefing is where I record and then I basically let people listen. It's more or less a transmission when they want it. A skill is more interactive. So I could say, as an example, maybe buy Walmart stock when it hits X number of dollars. If there was a skill for that, then it would do as I tell it to do. So there are skills where you can have interaction back and forth and actually conduct transactions. There's a lot more of those out there now than flash briefings. Podcasts, again, if you're thinking about getting out in front of a lot of people, podcasts are good, but it's saturated. There's 650,000 podcasts out there. And it's estimated that 2/3 of those are inactive now because it's just hard to create a podcast. It's a lot harder than a flash briefing. Podcasts are like an hour long. And you typically have a guest on there, and it's just a big production. Whereas a flash briefing is you get on there, you say what you want to say, and you're out. Really easy, actually. Visual comparison of podcasts versus flash briefings. Clearly, there are not as many flash briefings, but there's a demand for people wanting this content. So much so that we actually created our own. So I talked about the Marketers Anonymous podcast. That is only a podcast because it's a long format. Like this talk here is going on for a while. It's beyond 10 minutes. It's not suitable for a flash briefing. That's perfect for a podcast. But every single day we have a flash briefing where we talk about how we're building our company, and our goal is to grow to $100 million by 2030. So every time that we learn something, we take a note, and then we record it, and every day we come out with a 3 or 4 minute episode where we talk about this thing, right? So we'll probably do an episode about this meetup, what we learned here, the things we did well, the things that we didn't do so well, right? We knew that the room was going to be great. We didn't know that the ice maker was going to suck, right? As an example. So things like that, we'll just talk about that. Think about, the ice maker, right? We messed up when it came to selecting this room. We didn't realize that was going to be a problem. We'll talk about that in our flash briefing. It's also available as a podcast on all the major platforms, but ideally or primarily it's a flash briefing, and that's how we market it. We want people to think about this as a flash briefing, not necessarily a podcast. All right, so I've been talking a lot about Amazon and Echoes and flash briefings, the whole Amazon ecosystem, but if you look at the number of devices that are out there, the top one is Amazon at 100 million, which sounds like a huge number, and in actuality is peanuts. Go all the way down to the bottom, Google is the dominant player here. They've got 1 billion devices, and the reason they have 1 billion devices is because it's baked in. I can say, okay, Google, and if it does what it's supposed to, it's going to turn on in a second, and it didn't do what it's supposed to. It vibrated. But there's a huge opportunity out here, and not a lot of people are taking advantage of it. Real quick, I'll run you through a couple of companies that are doing a few things in voice. So these are companies that I found out about when I was at the AlexaConf. The first one's called PrivateKey, and I had mentioned before the scenario of placing a stock trade with your voice. This company, there's a lot of security issues with that, right? So if I have an Echo in my home or say my office, I want to make sure that only I can actually make that secure transaction. They are setting up ways so that you can do things like buy stock. You can buy insurance policies, right? These are like real legal transactions. You can make your mortgage payment. So think about what's involved in paying a mortgage. If I said, Alexa, pay my mortgage, it sounds simple, but a message is going from your bank, right, or into your bank saying, whatever that scheduled payment is supposed to be, make it over to this other financial institution, transfer money. That's a big deal. So you have to have a secure way of doing it, and your voice is not necessarily enough. So they're using basically two-factor authentication, the phone's involved, but they're trying to solve this problem. They're trying to get ahead of this so that when there is a pure voice solution, they're the leaders there. This company here, Voicemetrics, they have a product that will take your company data, like your KPIs, things like how many sales did you do last week, what's your revenue, whatever KPIs or whatever data you want to see, and you can get that through your speaker. Right? So as the CEO of the company, I'm very interested in a couple of metrics. What's our recurring revenue? How much did we do last month? How many bugs have we had? What's our NPS score? And I go to a spreadsheet now, and I look at it, if I remember. But what would be cool is when I say, Alexa, play my flash briefing, the very first one is, Eric, your revenue is X. Yesterday, you had 5 bugs. Your NPS has dropped by 2 points. Right? That would be awesome. So they're solving that problem for about 20 or 30 bucks a month. They'll extract the data out of things like Google Sheets or a database, and they'll voiceify it. How many people here send surveys by email to clients? Anyone? All right, 1, 2, 3, cool. And open rates for emails are horrible. Open rates are about 25 to 35%. So all that effort that you put into that survey that you send out by email, 2/3 of it is completely wasted because it never gets opened. You might as well send by text message, actually, that's way better. But what this company is trying to do is do it by voice. So you could do this right now. Actually, if we had an echo, I could say open survey line, and then it'll ask me what survey do you want to take, and I would give it a name. This is a keyword that I would put in. And it'll ask whatever question I want asked, and then you can give your response. So they're doing surveys over voice assistants, and primarily through Alexa. There's some really cool stuff going on. Oh, we can't test it here, but have you heard about whisper mode? So whisper mode in Alexa, it's really kind of weird when you try it. If you have an Alexa, try it when you get back to your Alexa. You can whisper to it, and she'll whisper back. Yeah, it's really a little freaky, but. All right, so some takeaways. There was a land grab on the internet, on mobile devices. It spanned 20 years. If you're not already on mobile, or if you haven't mobilized your workforce, you're behind, and you know that, right? So this land grab that we've had, this 10, 12-year land grab for internet space, and then 10, 12 years for mobile, it's pretty much concluded. A lot of people believe that voice is the next land grab, and I've mentioned a couple of companies that are doing something about it. They're trying to get ahead of this thing. Sonic branding is big. These things are selling. This right here was the most sold device on Amazon 3 years in a row. Like this guy right here, nothing is bought more on Amazon during the holiday seasons than that right there. It's crazy. Oh, if you are a brand, if you have a company, you should absolutely look into flash briefings. It's super simple. You literally get a microphone and you talk into it, and then you publish it, and it just goes out to the world. And if you have something that's of interest, people will find you. So look into flash briefings. There's an opportunity there. Cool. That's all I got. We've got some announcements, but that's the talk. I'll go ahead and run you through the announcements after questions. Thanks.